I think so. I think a good win over Kevin Holland will get me into a nice spot to fight one of the top contenders.
Whatever they give me, to be honest with you. If they gave me 85 fights, I'd be fighting at 85. But it seems like I'm getting 170-pound fights right now, so I'll take whatever they give me. I just want to get paid.
The UFC have given him Kevin Holland. Is this a good matchup for Jack Della Maddalena? Is this where he should be in his career? Because when you get a superstar, potential champion, you want to caress them along nicely, don't you? Like Sean O'Malley, he got that treatment, worked out perfectly. With Jack as well, he got 3 first-round finishes in the UFC. No, 4 first-round finishes in the UFC, 3 performance of the night bonuses. But his last fight was a split decision. And yeah, I'm not saying he struggled, but it was a split decision. Sean Brady may have been a tougher fight. We don't know. We haven't seen the Kevin Holland fight. It's going to be a different challenge, right? But they did try and push him. Sean Brady's a top 10 guy. What does this mean for Kevin Holland, though? He's kind of perpetually now in welterweight.
His whole thing is about like showing up and showing off, isn't it? He's the big mouth. He took the fight with Hamzat on a day's notice because he was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll change opponents. Even though he lost, it was quite exciting for the minute and a half that it lasted.
Kevin's really interesting because he's kind of been always put against these veterans, and like he took out Jacare, Alex Oliveira, veteran, Tim Means, veteran, Ponzinibbio, Chiesa. He's just had veteran, and he's finished them all. Now with Kevin, we're like, okay, Kevin, so if we're going to keep moving you upwards towards the title picture, like this is a really good test for Kevin Holland.
I think this is entirely down to JDM. I think this is his moment to prove that he can compete with some of the best in the division. And if he can't get past Kevin, then I think that is a disappointing result for the UFC. Because I feel like Kevin is one of those fighters that through wins or losses, the fans generally will support him because of the personality that he has. There are just these guys that really don't lose in losses anyways. So even if Kevin loses against JDM, I don't think it's particularly like the worst thing for him.
He's that guy that shows up and fights people just because he wants to put on a good show.
Kevin has only fought the veterans. They haven't even given Jack veterans. Jack's just now like fighting the top contenders and the young guys. Like if you're building up a star, typically you do give him the veterans, don't you?
I feel like Kevin Holland in fights, in a sheer number of fights, he should be classed as a veteran because he's been in the UFC for a long time now and he's fought tons of people.
That happened in his last fight, right? Where he said, I'm supposed to be the new kid, but he's had more fights than Chiesa, which is crazy.
And Chiesa was in 7 years in the UFC, whereas
tough 16, 15.
Yeah. So Kevin Holland has had a ton of fights, but he's kind of a prospect in the welterweight because he's come down, in the past 2 years? But he's already had a ton of fights there, like 5 fights. Like he's already fought twice this year. He fought in April and July. But yeah, no, it's interesting having 2 really active guys, both in the same division, in a place where you think you would kind of separately promote them so they can each have their own title runs rather than putting them together. So it's that classic case of like, do the best fight the best, or is it like, should they be more tricky about who they get matched up again?
And that's why it's interesting as well, because typically you do make your way through the veterans. There's a lot of veterans in that division for guys to take on. Shavkat, Jeff Neal, and before that, Neil Magny again. So just making his way through these veterans. The good thing about this fight as well is we're going to kind of see Kevin Holland is a guy who took any fight he could get, wins, losses, whatever. And then you also got Jack Della Maddalena, who's kind of not getting those curated fights, but has up until this point been given the right opponents, let's say. So with Raul Rosas Jr. on the card, who they tried to sort of set up accordingly, because he is a really young guy and also then failed at like the second test ever, it's going to be interesting to see like what will benefit Raul more. Continuously being fed the right opponents to build his record, or going through a bit of adversity and losing to somebody that perhaps he should have won, but he did lose. Compare that to Kevin and Jack. Kevin has taken that road of fight anybody, wins and losses, and Jack's getting the right opponents. Who comes out? What's a better career path is what I'm trying to say.
How does that happen though, where a 17, 18-year-old gets a lot of hype coming from the Contender Series against competition that, he was a lot better at, but how does he go into a main card pay-per-view against a guy who's had probably 2 or 3 years more experience than him, and for that guy to be the underdog?
It's because of the Dana White privilege, because he goes on about all the time how much he loves Tuesday Night Contender Series and it's his favorite thing ever. And Rosas Jr. came off there looked really good in his fight, which is only up to Rosas Jr. He's the only one that can put on that performance. But then Dana loves that, and he's a prodigy, and he's going to be the next John Jones and go in there and beat everyone. And that's the reason he's getting pushed on main card, because he wants that kind of like crazy youngest ever champion story.
It's kind of like an Aaron Pico situation, isn't it? And he also lost, but he came out much better fighter afterwards.
Christian Rodriguez was so horrendously disrespected going into that fight because his career was great. It wasn't bad at all. Only had one loss, and they were like, oh, we'll feed him to Rosas Jr.
So maybe that isn't a case of what I said, where it's like with Rosas Jr., let's give him the right opponents. Maybe they did give him a tough challenge.
I just think everyone was just living in that bubble of this kid cannot go wrong. He's the future. He's going to be this massive star. We were sort of like dazzled by this kid being 17 and being so good that we didn't actually look at the reality of what was being handed to him. And what was being handed to him was a fucking difficult test that he drastically failed.
He was in Bellator, he was in LFA for 2 fights.
Look at where this man has been and what he's done.
Yeah, but but you're not a UFC matchmaker, and they might have thought, hey, you know what, Christian Rodriguez, you know, he's fought in his other promotions. He was also in the Contender Series. It's a win-win situation. If you ask me, I think that they've got a lot of belief in Christian Rodriguez, especially now looking at the fact that they gave him Raul Rosas Jr. If you're a matchmaker's mind, it could go either way. You always want a good scenario.
But they did no promotion for him at all.
Well, that might be true, but now they're giving him Cameron Simon, who again, if you've just beaten Raul Rosas Jr. and taken out a star, if they didn't want that to happen, they're not going to be like, let's give him another one of our up-and-coming stars, because he might take that guy out as well. But if he does, that's good. I wouldn't do that as a matchmaker unless I was actually had some belief.
Rosas Jr. was shoved down our throats for the whole fucking week.
But then why would you put him up against Cameron
Simon?
Simon?
Because they want him out there. They want him out there. They want him out there because they want Simon to fucking knock him out like he knocks everyone out.
It's almost like they're punishing poor Rodriguez as well. They were like, right, we're going to keep putting you against these guys until you fucking lose because you ruined the Rosas Jr. hype train.
Maybe that's one way of looking at it.
He crashed that party hard.
Yeah, or he comes out of the side of it having beaten 2 of the top prospects in that division.
There are so many fights, there are so many matches that are made where it's so clear as day that the UFC want a particular outcome. Not only Rosas Jr. was supposed to be a loss for him, but this next fight is supposed to be a loss for him as well. But if he can pull it out of the bag, surely the UFC kind of have to look at him now as something that they should promote.
Why were Bo Nickel and Rosas Jr. put in the game? Because they were meant to be the next guy, the new star. He's supposed to be this next big thing, which he still very may will be, because the UFC is where the best fighters are, so I don't blame him for losing. But that guy was brought in to lose, and now he's fighting another guy who he's meant to lose to. He will only get respected once he beats Cameron Simon. Speaking of guys that were meant to be beaten, is it bias or is it personal preference to say Kevin Holland is supposed to be the guy that's supposed to be beaten in this matchup?
This is JDM's opportunity to progress up the rankings because he's exciting and clearly a fan favourite. Not to say Kevin isn't, but he's already lost. He's already lost and nobody cares. That means he's unbeatable even when he does lose. Does that make sense?
It's kind of really interesting.
He doesn't lose any stock by losing to JDM.
You're kind of putting Kevin in a position where, like, yeah, he can't lose, but also, again, if you're a matchmaker, you don't always want to put. It's kind of stupid to always put your eggs in one basket. But if Kevin does win, I don't think this UFC will be like, we didn't want that to happen. It'll be like, well, holy shit, Kevin, you're moving up now. Like, definitely you're going to get like maybe a top 5 guy or something. Because if they wanted to give Jack someone that he could beat, they wouldn't have given him Kevin Holland, because Kevin Holland's a tough fight.
They've given him a guy that can lose but doesn't lose any stock. That's actually the best place to be as a fighter. It's kind of like that Nate Diaz effect, isn't it? It's just like you can lose, but you don't really lose. I mean, Kevin Holland could be booked with a top 10 again in his next fight, even if he does lose.
That's the thing. It's actually like, even though they're kind of 2 fan favourites for different reasons, Jack's at the point where he was supposed to fight Sean Brady, didn't, seemingly struggled a little bit more than we might have thought he would have. And then so now he's come back down in the rankings of who he's fighting, because now he's fighting the guy one above him rather than, halfway up the board. So it's actually a way more traditional step for Jack to take. So yeah, I think in this one, it's kind of feels if there was chips stacked in someone's corner, it would be Jack's rather than Kevin's. I feel like that's the storyline that we've sort of uncovered. So we have Shevchenko versus Grasso coming up this weekend, and something great to do with the fights is have a little drink alongside. And what's better than the official sponsor of the UFC, Howler Head?
There isn't anything better.
Nothing. No.
Exactly. So if you want to get your own, get down to a larger Tesco's, pick some up. Or if you don't want to go out, you can shop online at Master of Malt and Amazon. All the information you need is down in the description below. Follow those links and get yourself some Howler Head.
Thank you to everyone who's a channel member on the channel. We appreciate you. We know you've been enjoying the extra content, podcast episodes, etc., whatnot. The writers meeting, of course, you guys can jump in there as well. But if you do want to be part of the family, click the join button down below. You can do so. It's real cheap and it helps us do cool things.